My name is Heidi Kelleher, but that's not what's on my birth certificate. My birth certificate says Helen, and people ask me, how do you get Heidi out of Helen? And I say, you don't. It was the one assertive act of my mother in 1950 because she wanted to name me Heidi. And my father said, that's not dignified enough. What if she becomes President of the United States? And my mother said, fine, name her anything you want. If it's a girl, I'm calling her Heidi. So I've been called Heidi since the day I was born. My father was a very brilliant, domineering man, and she was the traditional 50s housewife and stayed at home and took care of the kids, and she was the heart of the family. And my father, like I say, a brilliant man, but incredibly demanding. I have to say I have incredible respect and admiration for him because I think that was my best education. He would challenge my brother and me to support our ideas, to defend our ideas, to validate them. He taught me how to think. When my parents bought the farm in northern Illinois when I was 9, my mother would have people out for the weekend. I learned to be socially gracious from my mother. I learned to entertain. I loved to cook. I loved to have people over at my house. And we would have these fabulous games of barn tag. Just wonderful fun. And we would spend hours doing that. And then my father would say, all right, you will be charged as a group 35 cents for every hay bale you break. I know how to bale hay, I know how to mow hay, get it in the barn, I know how to tassel corn. I have lived the majority of my life on the East Coast, but I still feel a Midwesterner at heart. I have an older brother. Rick is 2.5 years older than I. I think it was harder for him than it was for me in the family because he was the older and he was the male. And so there were much harder expectations put on my brother than on me. We lived in Evanston, Illinois, a short stint in Joliet, Illinois, when my father was manager of the Elgin, Joliet, and Eastern Railroad out there. Then back to Chicago when we lived in Evanston. It was only 4 blocks from Lee Street Beach in Lake Michigan. I still have wonderful memories of time just killed on the beach, you know, just swimming, and it was really wonderful. Then my parents bought the farm in northern Illinois, almost into Wisconsin. Really, truly the middle of nowhere. And then my father was promoted to the U.S. Steel in Pittsburgh. He had to stop and think, well, do I retire and move to the farm and then raise Heidi in this environment? Or do we all go to Pittsburgh? And so he said, I can't do that to her. I can't relegate her to Lena, Illinois. So we moved to Pittsburgh when I was in the middle of my 10th grade year. I always was interested in the plays and would try out for the, and want to do things, but I assisted directed the Glass Menagerie with Mr. Myers in my senior year, and I said, this is what I want to do. I can remember saying to my father that I thought I wanted to be a drama teacher. And he looked at me just aghast. I said to him, no, Dad, I really want to be a drama teacher. So I applied to Ohio University, which had a very good theater and arts department, and got accepted there. I have a BFA in theater. and I picked up enough certification credits to be certified as a school teacher. I was there from 1968 to 72, and we're talking about the Vietnam War. I was working at a photography studio in Chicago on Michigan Avenue, and there were the convention riots. I just said to the girlfriend I was with, we're not staying here. Then in my sophomore year of college, the Kent State killings were just an hour north of us. And when they shut down Kent State, all the activists or whatever, agitators, whatever, came down to Ohio University. I was awakened to political consequences. It made me more focused and driven on doing what I could do well. I'd been dating the same man for 4 years, so we both went to graduate school together. He went to Columbia and I went to Teachers College at Columbia. When I graduated, I married Mike. In 1972, there were so many people that had decided to become teachers so they could avoid the draft. So I was graduating, and in desperation, I'm reaching out to every private school and managed to get a job in a very affluent school, the Buckley School in New York. I taught kindergarten there for a year and a half because that was the only job I could get in New York City. So I made $6,000 a year. My husband wasn't making anything because he was still finishing up his master's degree. And so I had $500 a month and survived like that for a year and a half. You know, I would have qualified for food stamps, but I knew myself and I knew that I was going to get out of this, that this was a temporary situation, so I just persevered. Looking in the New York Times one day, there was a job offer for teaching art of film in some place called Somerville, New Jersey. And I thought, wow, I could do that. Because my husband was getting his master's in filmmaking. I knew a lot about it. I had the theater background, you know, so I figured, all right, I'll apply for the job. Got to the bus station, the day of my interview, got on the bus. I said to the bus driver, now, sir, would you please let me know when we are in Somerville because I have no idea where it is. I get off the bus and I'm in the middle of Route 22 between the eastbound and the westbound section at a gas station. And I'm like, oh no, where am I? This is crazy. I went over to the gas station attendant and I said to him, excuse me, sir, but could you tell me where Somerville High School is? And I'm thinking, what am I gonna do? I just assumed I could get a cab or, you know, nothing. And he goes, oh yeah, lady, it's right over there. And I only had to cross the eastbound of Route 22 and walk a block, and I was there at Somerville High School for my interview. And I got offered the job that day, thus started my 25-year teaching stint. And then the following fall, they cut a lot of teachers, and I was not cut, thank God. But they cut the teacher who had been directing the plays. And they said, all right, will you direct the plays? Well, yeah, I want to keep my job, you know, and that's what I had intended to do all along. So I said, sure. When you do things like direct plays, you have a relationship with your students that's other than the formal classroom. I became very close to a number of the students, and we had a great 4 years together. When I was doing my first play, I was also teaching 2 classes of freshman honors English. Only 20 years later did I realize that that was the most exceptional class of students.
She became not just a mentor, but a confidant. And we were in that really awkward young adolescent angst. And it was very impactful to be able to share things with her and have her write back in the strictest confidence.
She really kind of opened, at least me, and I think from what I'm hearing, I think is all of us, opened us up to worlds that we had never thought about.
Students learn to think for themselves and be truly individuals and see what it means to be an individual, the challenges of that, as opposed to just going with the flow and doing what society thinks is necessarily the best. I found out that they didn't have a thespian society. I inducted people into the group. You have to have so many hours of theater, and they had to keep track of all of that, but they were so proud.
The segue from Heidi as classroom teacher to Heidi as director, as the advisor to our little thespian troupe. When we did The Miracle Worker, she sat with us, cast and crew, and went through the symbolism in the play, the importance of the key and the water, and it wasn't just about bringing good performances out. It was about having all of us understand the symbolism of the play before we even began with a read-through and talking about it and trying to present it.
And in the meantime, then I'm going back and I'm directing the plays, 2 plays a year, until the last year where they decided that because of budget cuts, theater is always the first to go, they were only going to do 1 play a year. That was the spring musical, and they cut the senior class play. So I said, okay, we're going to do a series of 1 acts. And I submitted it to the Thespian Society, and we were accepted. We rented a van, we had a set, we had costumes, we had the whole bit. We schlepped it all out there to Muncie. They had a great time. We all had a great time.
I mean, really a pretty impressive and accomplished, cadre of students. I mean, honestly,
Right.
Yes.
college professors and administrators and whatever, just not just from the academic point of view, but people who've gone on to be leaders.
Mm-hmm.
But we've drawn on what we learned there our whole lives. I mean, not that it's over by any stretch,
That's what education
but
should be.
45 years later, it's still very fresh and it's still very much a part of us. When Michael started teaching, he said he was the drama coach and he was an English teacher, and he said, "I've become Heidi. Is this what I wanted to be when I grow up?"
Really, the value of an English teacher is not just instilling a love of literature, but teaching students to communicate, not only verbally, but in written form. And that it takes vocabulary, it takes the ability to articulate abstract ideas, and to me, that was the most gratifying thing. In my education, my personal education, I've been teaching for 5 years, hadn't had any kind of courses. I missed being a student. I just love learning. So I said, all right, this is it. I'm retiring from the theater. And I went back to school at Rutgers. And it was also at that point in my life that I realized that my marriage was going nowhere, that I was married to a little boy. So I divorced Mike that summer. That summer, when I divorced Mike, I met my husband, Bill.
I met Heidi through a mutual friend, Cheryl Lynn Petrill, who kept perceiving herself as a matchmaker and was determined to set up her coworker Heidi with me, an old friend from high school. And Cheryl was persistent, and I think it took her 6 months of being persistent to set up our first date.
We've always been told the story that Dad must have been a very confident man to show up for his blind date in his flip-flops and pink polo shirt.
You really gave her the old B- try, didn't you?
Perhaps, yeah. But it worked out surprisingly well, and then we had a second date.
With the pink plates.
When he cooked for her on your grandmother's pink
My
plates.
grandmother's pink plates.
Pink is a running theme throughout the courtship, from what I understand.
We're told that it was self-confidence on my part to be bold enough to wear a pink shirt followed up by pink plates on the dishes.
Very masculine.
But it all worked out.
Yeah.
And I was very impressed by her intelligence, her self-confidence, her inability to pull a punch when she spoke. And obviously
Wait,
she was hot.
Ability to pull a punch.
Okay, she does never pulls the punch.
What's pulls the punch?
Pull a punch, to be
Like,
direct,
bring it back,
forthright,
bring it
to
back.
Oh.
sort of like you, to speak before you think.
Yeah, that's on brand. Yeah. Yeah. And she was a fox. Mom was like 11 out of 10. She was like an old flip-flops Magoo over here. It's like a solid 5. Didn't you propose to her while you were driving?
On the parkway.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Just
Between-
deep romance. That's
I think it was
it.
between exit 138 and 142.
That is the dream.
One date, and I knew this is the man I want in my life for the rest of my life. I valued the fact that he was a smart guy. He has a fabulous sense of humor. I love him more and more all the time, because when I married him, I had no idea what a good father he would be. You don't know a person really until you've lived with them and grown with them. And never wanted kids till I met Bill. When you love someone like that, then it makes the whole world wonderful. All of a sudden you're an optimist.
1983, July 30th.
Wow, that's
One of the big days of my life.
Right.
You popped out, and I went to a bar with Brian McMahon.
Heidi, I have probably needed to atone for this my whole life, was in labor with me for a solid,
It's a long
like
time.
36 hours.
Oh,
Like,
you were the
if
one
it
who was
yeah,
ages. Yeah.
Yeah. Nowadays, no doctor would let you do it. They just give you a C-section. But I was always regaled as a child with the stories of my birth.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
and so I was-
grim.
Says the man who didn't have to be in labor for a day and a half.
I
was
found
hard.
it exhausting.
We brought Margaret back to this little house, and aches and pains, it was a little tight, a little awkward here and there in this house. And so we contracted with a fabulous architect, Dan Radshevitz, who designed an addition for the house. We only kept the front hall, the stairs, the bedroom upstairs, the living room, and then ripped off the whole back and added on, and created a wonderful house.
And then a few years later, 1986.
Yeah.
But during the working period, she managed to juggle the demands of the three of us,
Yeah.
competing demands as they are.
We're not easy. It's a small family, but we're
a lot.
a lot.
I'm not a motherly type of person. I don't go gaga over babies. I don't go, oh, wonderful baby, oh, cute, and sing-songy and all that. It's not me. I mean, I love my kids. I've loved them since the day they were born. But every year was better than the year before because they were older. And what I wanted was kids that would, that you could reason with, that you could talk to, that you could challenge and watch the little wheels turning. But I said to Bill, when I married him, if you think you're gonna get me pregnant and I'm gonna stay home with babies, cooking and babies, you're crazy. I am a career woman. And I pounded my fist on the eye. I am a career woman. He goes, that's fine, that's fine. We always worked as a team, always as parents.
During your formative years, when the girls were in school, middle school, and then high school, they both participated in lots and lots of sporting events or sport teams. And
Heidi never understood.
She never understood a single one. God bless her. She was at every
game.
single
I
game,
couldn't tell you any of the
no
rules.
matter what.
No idea what was happening.
No matter what. And she would have her needle point, and she'd be sitting there on freezing cold bleachers, gloves on, and she'd always just go, way to go! That was her thing, no matter what. She'd be like, good work, or way to go! And be like, I just struck out, Mom. God damn it.
I think I was a junior in high school, and she finally equated the left field and right field in softball to like stage left and stage right. She's like, oh,
Like a theater?
that's how it works? And
Margaret is a splitting image of her father. I'm pushing this child in a stroller down the street in Somerville, and one of my mother-in-law's friends stops and she says to me, oh, you must be Bill's wife. And I'm like, yes, I am. I'm Heidi Kelleher. She says, I could tell because the baby looks just like him. Okay. So, and she's like him in temperament, in personality. They're both firstborn children, while Ellis and I share the second-born child mentality. Margaret was always focused, driven. She was always very much her own person, very independent thinking, and just a delight. The easiest kid in the world to be a parent to. She was obedient, she was bright, she was sensitive, she was funny, terrific. And then we had Ellis. And Ellis is the second syndrome kid. And she is a lot more like me. And she's turned into an absolutely fabulous human being. She fought the whole way there. She has to take the circuitous path to get to where she wants to go, as opposed to being driven forward. And talk about funny. Oh my heavens, is she funny. Wisecracking, sociable, much more outgoing and cool. Bill and I feel so strongly about the fact that when you have kids, you don't give them everything they want. You raise them to be independent, to be self-sufficient, to be thinking human beings who care about their community and those around them and not caught up in themselves. We had a lot of dinners around the kitchen table, and we laughed our way through those meals. I wasn't concerned about etiquette and whether you used the right fork or whether you, and we would joke with each other and laugh at each other and bust on each other.
she also has certain trigger words.
Oklahoma.
Yes. For example, when I was in college, I had a friend who's from Oklahoma, and I couldn't have this conversation with Heidi without saying like, "Oh, so Taylor's from Oklahoma." You, oh,
Oklahoma, where the wind comes streaming down the plains. Every single time.
And my husband.
I don't know
has
anyone
a-
from Oklahoma, and I think that if I ever met them, I would be like, it's so nice to know you, but I'm so sorry we can't get close. He's like,
And
my mother has a
husband-
tick.
My memories, every night when we went to bed, she would always say,
Good night.
"Good night,
Sleep tight.
Don't let the
Don't let the bed bugs bite.
Have
Have sweet dreams, and God bless you."
And then
she'd say, I love you.
Love you.
Yeah.
We heard our parents say they love each other, where my mother said, I love you to me at
Every day.
least once a day.
It's selfish to say I'm proud of them because I wouldn't say I had a lot to do with it. Bill had a lot to do with it. But we are incredibly proud of both of our girls. Margaret went to Dublin and got her master's there, and while she was there, her boyfriend, since she was 16, proposed to her, and she accepted the proposal. And when they came back, the two of them bought a house right on High Street, 6 blocks away from us, and have 2 terrific little boys, Declan, who just had his first day of first grade yesterday, and Gideon, whose whole goal in life is to be just like his brother.
People who she knew who were already grandparents, like, oh, won't it be so fun to have a little grandkid to spoil? And Heidi's like, excuse me, I will not spoil a grandkid.
No,
That's not what I do.
we don't spoil.
We don't spoil. And now, like, she's bought so many Christmas presents that we've refused to let Declan open all of them. So ever since Declan was born, and we have come here every Friday night. Now, I mean, the kids expect it. They want to go to Ga, as my youngest Gideon has first started calling Gran. Gran is her grandparent name in honor of her mother.
Ellis got married in October of 2017, and she married, what my husband always said, she went to London and she came back with a souvenir. And it was this Irishman that she met in a pub in London named Eamon Quinn.
One of the years you guys came over to visit me in London, I think when you were coming over to meet Eamon, who is now my husband, I went to their hotel room for cocktail hour because the beverage card is in play. And I, you know, knock on their hotel room, and the door's open. I walk in, and Mom is, there's a sort of chaise at the edge of the foot of their bed, and Mom is lounging, feet up, gin and tonic in hand, with a fascinator on her head, a blue headband with like a feather fluff thing, and she's like, hello, would you like a cocktail? And I was like, what is happening? So this was great. That was a very much like a that's my mom moment. She's phenomenal.
In 2000, we said, all right, we're going to take the kids to Europe. They're old enough now. We had a wonderful time. We got a travel agent who booked us into Madrid, and then we flew up to San Sebastian and drove along the coast and ended in Santiago de Compostela. What a magical place. And I'd also bid on a trip to Paris, so we were in Paris as a family. That was the year Paris had the heat wave, and we were in an un-air-conditioned apartment, and unbelievable experience. I mean, we were going down into the metro because it was cooler in the metro. And I can still remember Ellis standing on the vents in the Louvre, the little air conditioning vents, and just standing over them, to cool herself off.
As she packed the rolling suitcases, or whatever suitcase there was this little
Carry-on.
rolling carry-on.
Yeah.
And I looked with some sense of horror because she was filling it with Diet Dr. Pepper. And we were going to be
Cans.
going for, let's say 10
days.
or 12 days, whatever it was. But since she drinks 2 Diet Dr. Peppers each and every day, there were 2 Diet Dr. Peppers
There were
for
20,
each day
yeah.
on the trip, because one can't buy Diet
Diet
Dr.
Dr.
Pepper
Pepper
in
abroad.
Spain.
Yeah.
And I think there were 24 Diet Dr. Peppers, 2 Diet Tonics,
Liters of
and-
diet tonic,
and a bottle of Tanqueray.
a bottle of Tanqueray, and actually there would have been limes as well.
Yeah, if they could have gotten in the country. So,
Yeah.
this thing then becomes a little tiny carry-on that weighs about 40 pounds.
And it's becomes
And
The beverage
And then
cart.
since we called it the beverage cart,
We knew that we loved travel. You know, all of this had happened prior to Bill's heart attack. But then we kicked it up a notch. We weren't just doing one trip a year. It's like, whatever you want to do, dear, whatever you want to do. So we're having a great time. When I hit 25 years, my daughter was beginning her senior year of high school. And I thought, you know, I would really love to spend 1 year of really enjoying my kids while they're still here, before they fly off on their own. And so I talked to Bill, and Bill, who has always been supportive of whatever I've wanted to do, said, sure, if you want to retire, retire. I was a wife, I was a mother, I said, I'm a teacher. And I was always proud of that, and I didn't know how else to frame what I was. I knew that my faith was important to me. I need the church as a community to nurture me, and so that I can then reach out in my faith and hopefully do something of worth, because God has blessed me so immensely in my life. The least I can do is turn around and reach out to others in that same sense of God as love. I did mission trips from 2004 to 2011. It started with me sitting in church, and the minister said, there's a mission trip to Mexico that another church was doing, and they've asked if we have anybody that would like to go. It means going into Mexico and sleeping in a tent and basically camping as you build homes for other people. And I just felt God saying, Heidi, you can do this. I went to Ecuador and built bamboo home on poles. I went twice to the Navajo Nation. There was a fellow Presbyterian church out there that on the Navajo Nation that was a tiny little church. They had a congregation of 23, and they needed a new roof on their church. Then Katrina hit, and I did 7 trips down to Mississippi after Katrina. The first one was 6 weeks after the storm. Oh, unbelievable devastation. My mission days are over, but I still feel very strongly the need to live out your faith, to act on it, to turn around and be there for other people, to recognize need and reach out and help them in whatever way you can. It was April of 2011. Bill was 59 years old, and we like to go to Saturday matinees. We were 15 minutes into the play. I feel Bill's arm fall off the shared arm, and I thought, I can't believe it. I look over at him, and he's like this. And I thought, you bugger. It is only 15 minutes into this play, and you've already fallen asleep. And I whacked his chest and said, bip, and no response. And then both arms were down. And I panicked. I jumped up. I said, help. The play is still going on, but there's this commotion that I've caused by jumping up. And there was a woman who ended up to be I don't know what kind of a doctor she was, but she was a couple rows in front of us. She reaches over and takes Bill's wrist and she goes, "There's no pulse. We have to get him out of there." This doctor's husband came in, got all the people out between Bill and the aisle, came in and scooped up all 6'2" of Bill and carried him out into the aisle and put him down with his head up the aisle. And as soon as he was on the ground, his wife was pounding on his chest, violently pounding with the CPR in his chest. Lisa comes over and stands next to me, and you never know what your faith is until you have a situation like this. And I can remember turning to Lisa and saying to her, "Lisa, I know you're not a practicing Christian, but will you please pray for Bill?" And I started praying. Then they got the defibrillator out and they shocked him, and it was not until like the second or third shock that they got a pulse. It was a difficult, traumatic 48 hours. But by Sunday, this is now 36 hours later, they determined it was a heart attack. So he was transferred from Roosevelt down by Columbus Circle up there in an ambulance. And as he's transferring, now this time I'm in the back of the ambulance with him because he was not in a state of distress. And he looks up and he goes, "Maybe that's the light I saw." And I've always wondered whether God was shining a light on him when he was in that theater and in that first ambulance, and that in my husband's mind, it's the ambulance lights that are the light up there. But I know it was the light of God looking out after my husband. They determined on Wednesday that he needed a quadruple bypass. Margaret, Gavin, and I were there, for when he would come out of surgery. Margaret and I went in and said goodbye to him Tuesday night before he went into surgery because we just didn't know. We sat there and waited for the doctor to come back, and he said it all went well, and he's just lying there and he opens his eyes. He has the most beautiful blue eyes. And he opened his eyes and he saw me. And I knew, okay, we're coming back from this. I couldn't have done it. I couldn't have survived this if it hadn't been for the girls. And they were there for their father and for their mother. So, very grateful that he's alive, and so am I. I was on the board of the Somerset Valley YMCA before it merged with the Hills. I truly, like I said, believe the cause of the Y is very good. And I'm over there 5 days a week for my own health, and also the people of members of the Y have turned to me as a resource. They know that I will listen, and I think that's why I've become so proactive in raising money for the Y every year for their annual support campaign. We gave away $186,000 in benefits to people that were in financial need. So I see how every dollar is so important. I know this is money going for a good cause to help strengthen families in our local community. So personally, selfishly, I got to spend 4 days a week with my best friend Pam, doing aquatic exercise, which I had always loved. And some people said to me, Heidi, why did you retire? Because I taught a lot of their kids, teaching locally. And I said, because I want to be able to come to the Y and have a class with Pam.
If you're lucky, you have one or two exceptional teachers in your life. She certainly was an exceptional teacher. She is not just an exceptional teacher, but the only one in all the different relationships I had with people I met who's is and remains a friend. And it's just count ourselves very blessed to have been in that freshman honors English class.
But it wasn't just us. You know, I would argue that it was probably at least half of those students would still think fondly and be appreciative of the influence that Heidi had over us.
Absolutely.
I mean, I could name just a half a dozen who, could, if they could be here, would be here.
We're not unique in
that
our impressions. We share those impressions with the people we shared that classroom with.
Having that adult at school who, again, sort of saw me for who I was, encouraged my potential, believed in me, and taught me so much about literature and theater, was really something that, honestly, if I hadn't had that, I don't know where I would have ended up or what I would have ended up doing. So thank you.
When I think about my mom, I appreciate that I have known my whole life how loved I am. And if I give anything to my children that I was given, I hope it's that. But I also appreciate that my mom is a strong, independent woman. And I think that was something she always wanted in us. What has my mom instilled in me? That I too wanted to be a strong, independent woman who had a career that I enjoy, that found a sense of purpose, not only in my family, but also in what I can do outside of that.
She is an extraordinary woman who has, throughout her life, lived her truest and most authentic self, unapologetically oneself. That is a driving sort of core foundational part of my identity, and one that I have inherited from her. The work ethic, the true independence, all of that is also very much imparted upon us by Mom. And also knowing we take a lot of jokes with each other. We rip into each other all the time, but we are from such a core place of stable, enduring, bottomless love.
I think that the qualities that I saw in Heidi initially, that intellect, that intelligence, that independence, have been really enduring. The best proof of it is the girls, who are a product of those traits, those characteristics. She's been a great partner, a great lover in all respects.
I wouldn't have known you and known about these Life Legacy videos if it hadn't been for our good dear friend Pam, who died. And since her death a year ago, I have tried to live my life more as Pam. She's the closest thing I have to a mentor. And she lived and loved everybody and wanted to include everybody, make everybody feel welcome. And she lived for that moment. And when she talked to you, you were the only thing in her world, and that was the most important. And she had that ability to make everybody feel important and valued and loved. And So since her death, which has been life-changing for me, I have tried to live more with Pam as my example, and I see Pam as my true north, as my guiding light.